Today on Car Traction, you join us on a bit of a gloomy January day, but our spirits will certainly be lifted by this wonderful example of an MGB GT from 1973. Now this car has recently been bought by no one other than Grandad. Now he has had classic cars, well, for a lot of the time. He's had Van der Pla 1300, he's had a Morris Minor, he used to also have a Morris Minor Traveller, but those have just moved on with time, and for the last year or so he's found himself with a bit of an empty garage. So recently a friend of his decided to sell a Harvest Gold, I believe it is the colour, MGB GT, and he decided to snap it up because he fancied a classic car. And we can all say anyone watching this does love a good MGB GT, one of the most practical, well known and easy to fix, easy to work on, easy to drive classic cars of British car history. So in this video I'm going to be taking a quick look around this wonderful example, the 1973 recessed grille model MGB GT. So what do I mean by recessed grille? When the MGB GT was released in October of 1965, the grille would have had chrome slats that came out here, and this is a feature of the early cars. They kept this design until about 1972, and in around 1972, this is a 73 car, they decided to switch to this, which is the recessed grille design. And as you could see, the grille is quite a bit further back than where the slats would have been around here, but this design wasn't very popular and it was only produced in this guise for about a year or so, and then they changed to a honeycomb design grille back here. The MGB GT was always designed for the US market and not only the British market, and in the 1970s US emissions regulations and all sorts and safety regulations really tightened around cars like this, and this meant in 1975 that large rubber overriders had to be added, and the whole ride height of the car was raised by 1 inch into the iconic rubber bumper design. And these cars were not liked as much, anywhere near as much as the early cars. And many people think from there on the MGB declined rapidly, but actually 1977 was one of the best years for MGB sales of the factory in Abingdon. But from then on until 1980 it was a bit downhill, and the Abingdon factory eventually closed in 1980, and this was really due to people not liking the big sorts of rubber bumpers of the cars after 75. But this car, being from 1973, is a recessed grille model. So now let's just have a quick look at the back. Now looking around the back, some of the very first MGBs of 1965 and perhaps 1966 would not have had these reverse lights here, and I think from about 66 onwards all the other marks, the rubber bumper, the recessed grille models, the honeycomb grille, they all have these reverse lights. So next time you're stuck behind an MGB GT or you find yourself in an old car show, one of the ways to discern a slightly later Mark 1 MGB GT from the very first ones is to see if they have the reverse lights, and if those are not there, then that is one of the very first MGB GTs. Of course, the MGB made its first appearance in 1962, but it was only 1965, as I've already said, where they went to the GT design. Now this was designed by Pininfarina, and you can really see the difference. Obviously no folding roof, it's a hard top coupe all the way back, and they actually had to make a lot more changes than you'd think. Like, for example, the windscreen had to be higher and deeper, and this means that in a GT you get quite a bit more headroom than a Roadster with the roof up. The GT is also very usable, as the windows too had to be raised to give better visibility, and this means that there's actually quite a sizable boot under the hatchback there. Now with the GT there are some form of back seats, they're not huge albeit, but those do fold down, and it does offer quite a bit of luggage space. So if you're going to a car show and you want your picnic in the back, then there's perfect amount of space. I mean, you could daily drive this. It really is an incredibly practical car, and that's why MGBs were sold in just over 500,000 all in total, and they really are still a really popular car for their practicality, and they're just easy cars, easy to find parts, easy to work on. Everything about them is just made for an easy classic car to own. As you can see, the practical hatchback design of the GT offers more than adequate space for your picnic and all your clobber, and of course Grandad has already kitted out his MGB GT for it. So here is the mighty powertrain of all the MGBs. So this is a 1.8 4-cylinder engine. This is also powered by twin carbs. This has got K&N filters on the side of them, but that is aftermarket. Original, this would have made about 97 brake horsepower thereabouts at 5,500 RPM, so a perfectly practical and fast enough car. It still keeps up with modern traffic today easily. This one's had a few modifications under here, as I said, K&N filters. There's also an oil cooler on the front here, but everything else is pretty bog standard. And as you can see, this is a really clean example, and just look at the space all around. Now, as long as I don't clobber my head on this bonnet here, it'll be really easy to work on in this, because it's a really simple little 4-cylinder engine and there's plenty of space, and as I said, plenty of parts from good clubs. And of course, the 4-cylinder was not the only car to go into a similar body. Now, we also had the MGC, which was where a 3-litre straight 6 engine was put into the chassis of the MGB with a few other modifications, but that's basically it. And these cars were not as widely liked as the 4-cylinder MGB. The MGC was known to be a bit front heavy because it got this massive 3-litre 6-cylinder block at the front, and then after that in the 70s, for the GTs only, MG decided to put the Rover V8 in, which was a much better alternative. Nice, and it was the right shape really, because you can see the 6-cylinder, it's a long cam cover and it's not really a right shape, but a V8 is a bit more compact that way and it's a bit wider, and as you can see, there's plenty of space either side of the engine here. Now, while the MGB is an extremely common car to find, you don't see as many of the MGB V8s. These were made in very small numbers. I believe it was only about a couple of thousand, or it's not going to be much more than that, so those are very desirable. Now, this car here also has MGB V8 brakes on the front, so those are disc brakes, which just makes it slightly grabby. Another one of the good old modifications to this car. But MGB's, the 1.8 4-cylinder engine, that is really practical and a great little engine for a great little car. Now, of course, the MGB had a predecessor, which was logically the MGA. Now, this was also still a very popular little classic sports car, but was a bit more sort of brutal and back to bones. Now, the MGB, like this one here, were designed to be a bit more practical, easy to use for the modern 1960s and 70s. So this meant that this car was designed with a monocoque chassis, which means you got lots more space inside, and it's a lot easier to get in and out of, I can tell you that, than an MGA fixed head coupe, which is the sort of earlier equivalent. And to prove that these cars are still as influential and great as they were new, we've just had someone pull up and offer us another MGB, so they're obviously still great classics. And any car show you go to, there's going to be either an MGB club or just random people. There's probably going to be about 5 or so MGBs. They are that popular and just a great old classic car. So as I've just mentioned, this car is made out of a monocoque chassis, which means there is actually a lot of legroom, and you can perfectly comfortably sit 2 people in the seats and perhaps 1 person or 2 children in the back. You can see this one's had a shortened gear lever as well, one of the many recommended modifications to these old MGBs. It's a perfectly spacious interior. Now, of course, there was its smaller brother, the MG Midget, which was, I do like them, but they are very small, and for the money you could get a perfectly good MGB GT like this. Now, if I had to choose, I would have a GT, because I just love the beautiful fastback body of these old cars. So now I'll let my aged assistant take the wheel for us to hear the wonderful growl of the B Series 4-cylinder. Aged, yes.
Thanks.
Well, I think that's pretty much it from me and this wonderful little MGB. I'm sure it will give Grandad and us many, many pleasurable miles. So if you'd like to see this car and more cars that we have, please remember to subscribe to Car Attraction. Comment below, do you like it? Do you have any experience of MGBs, seen them at shows, anything like that? Please do let me know what you think, and that's all. Thanks for watching.